Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. The Labour Court has criticised the Mine Safety Inspectorate for acting outside of the bounds of rationality in enforcing mine safety legislation. Martin Creamer joins me in studio to discuss this development. Hi Martin.
Hi Tracy.
So what led to the issuing of the mine stoppage at AngloGold Ashanti's Kopanang mine?
You know, there was an issue with explosives being out of a box and certain people not seen to be trained properly. So it's tantamount to coming along to a freeway and you might come off at the Empire Road off-ramp and there might be a little bit of an infringement. There might be some sort of traffic problem on the off-ramp. And what they do is then they come into the mine and they stop the entire mine. It's like saying, okay, there's an infringement on the off-ramp at Empire Road, but we're stopping the entire network from Pretoria to Vereeniging. You know, that's what it's sort of equivalent to. And so the slightest little infringements these days lead to major stoppages of mines, which, from 2012 to 2015 lost this country something like 13.5 billion rand in lost opportunity. Now, we're sitting in a country at the moment where we need to be able to export everything, to get the foreign exchange, to strengthen our rand, to make sure that we can buy and import stuff that we need. But this sort of sabotage is going on, and the sabotage is being perpetrated by the government. So, these small issues are being blown up by this inspectorate and actually hurting this country's economy enormously and frustrating not only the mine owners, but you can see the unions as well, who are also respondents among the three respondents in this case.
And why specifically did Labour Court Judge Andre van Niekerk deem the ruling irrational?
He said, the actions of government need to be rational, and if the court finds them to be irrational, it's like a serious thing, because in the issue of safety, you do want to protect people. You don't want people to die. So any judge would be very cautious, particularly a Labour judge. But he's saying that in this instance, they pick on a tiny little incident and they blow it up to irrational proportion. And it harms the company, it harms the country, and it harms the workers because they can't get the output that is required because mines are stopped for such long periods of time. Irrationally, he said. Now, it's a terrible pity that the courts have to govern our country. I mean, the courts are overloaded, and all you see are court cases all over the place. And as Judge Davis said this week, Parliament should be running this country, government should be running this country, not courts. But the courts are having to run the country because government officials, for some reason or other, adopt an attitude which this judge, I'm sure after thorough introspection, has decided is irrational. Now that sounds terrible for a government body. A government inspectorate's got a list of rules. It should know how to adopt what measures are required for safety, but in actual fact, in stopping such large areas of the mine, because of an infringement in such a tiny little area, I think it's 2% of the mine. It's 44 level, section 12. It's like 2% of the people who employed there, more than, I think there are 4,200 people employed. 2% of them work there, but 4,200 of them have to sit out for long periods of time because of a decision of an official who's working for a government department that is funded by the tax paid by the mine. And objective analysis of this is that it's completely irrational, to the point where the judge said to AngloGold Ashanti's legal team, if your request had been for me to charge the costs, the legal costs, to the individual officials in their personal capacity, not in a situation where the department has to pay for legal costs as they had to. But if you had asked me to impose these costs on these inspectors in their personal capacity, I would have considered that. That's how bad it was.
And how have AngloGold Ashanti and industry in general reacted to the ruling?
It's been an incredible reaction. I mean, not only did we carry this very prominently, and we will continue to follow it up, but you had just about every newspaper in the country, either having it as the front page banner headlines or down page, but everybody carried the story of how these Section 54 notices, which are seen as the government using a massive sledgehammer to break a nut. And even the judge said, you ought not use a sledgehammer to break a nut because you're going to crush the nut to pieces. And this is what's happening. And it was really the quick action of Anglo Gold Ashanti in negotiating in good faith over a long period of time with the Department of Mineral and Energy, the DMR, which we can see is really going off at a limb, even now on the charter. After engaging with them, pleading with them for long periods of time, they said, if our engagement with you doesn't actually lead to a change, where do we go? What is open to us? And of course, glibly, the department said, well, you can go through the courts. You can appeal to the courts. Well, they responded with alacrity, going into those courts. And I happened to bump into the legal team when I went to that African network dinner, and they said there were 3 mines that had been closed. They were really working flat out now to try and use the courts as an appeal platform to get these reopened. And they worked so fast. And of course, I think credit needs to go to Anglo Gold Ashanti as well, because their management team, once they were told by the government that you can go to the courts, they went rushing to the courts, and they had this overturned. And it was a very important issue to overturn this, because those inspectors now know there's a limit to what they do. They can't just be so punitive. And there have been a lot of rumors around why these officials are acting like this. And I can tell you, the rumors indicated that it wasn't for the benefit of South Africa, but it seemed to be for the benefit of certain factions. And this is such a distasteful thing in South Africa, where certain people are getting hold of officials and influencing them, and then we find these totally irrational decisions which affect our economy. Affect our economy badly at a time when we should be producing a lot of gold, because you can see that the gold price is not bad, and it's also in a situation where it's on a track where the price will go up. From 6 months to 9 months' time, it will just be on an upward movement, because gold has gone ex-growth. That means that people are not building new gold mines. They're not going out and exploring for gold. There's just such a shock in that whole business worldwide that we will be put in a very important, strong position for the country's economy if we can start producing at a good level now. And we can't have these officials coming around just stopping entire mines for long periods of time. And it's across the industry, that these punitive and irrational measures have been taken for far too long now. And so hopefully this will mean that they know their limits now. They cannot do this, and that companies will be able to produce at a level that's so important, because we've fallen behind Peru. We used to be the biggest gold producers in the world by a long shot. Our Rand refinery down the road has got capacity to do many, many tons more than we're doing. I mean, we've really fallen off the wagon when it comes to gold production, fallen off the wagon to such an extent that when we were first, it was great, but we're not even second. We're not even third. We're not even fourth. We're now below Peru. We're below Peru. We're in 5th position. Peru was a nothing. And how dare we fall below that? And how dare our officials, whose salaries we pay, push our economy back by irrational behavior?
But do you think this is going to have bearing on the issuing of Section 54 stoppages in future?
I think it has got to have, because what the judge said is, look, we had a similar case like this with, he named the company, it was a bricks company, must have been quarrying for clay, for bricks. He said, and we found irrationality of the same kind in these inspectorate decisions. Now, he's saying, you haven't heeded the court. In other words, you're ignoring the court. And he said it in the context of the legal team being alerted to, next time round, request that the costs be passed on to these officials in their personal capacity, so that they don't hide behind their department, which is paying these penalties, but they have to pay them in their personal capacity. And this could be a major factor going forward, because it might just alert those officials to the fact that they may have to pay a lot of money. Because, it's not as if it'll be legal costs, but what they really should be looking to recovering is just in this instance, Anglo Gold Ashanti was losing 10 million rand a day. Never mind legal costs, but the cost to the economy. Maybe a judge at some stage will say, look, this is the cost to the economy. Who's going to bear this? Perhaps these departments should start bearing the damage that they're doing to the economy, because our whole setup here is being affected. We don't want to be downgraded to this next credit rating. We need to be putting our best foot forward, not having people hamper our output. And I'm glad that Anglo Gold Ashanti worked so fast to make sure that the courts could highlight this irrationality, and hopefully it will stop it.
Thanks, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Tracy.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news analysis on the South African mining industry.